What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of our How Powerful series. Again, this is more discussion-based platform where we take a character in Star Wars, most times a little bit more of an obscure character that's really not so obvious, and we talk about how powerful they are. In the past, we've talked about characters like Supreme Leader Snoke, Qui-Gon Jinn, who's less obscure, and we also have sort of a Versus series platform like this. But today, we were going to talk about the character of Darth Nihilus, with one day having the intention of having Darth Nihilus and Abeloth face off in our Versus series. But first, we wanted to talk about Nihilus as a character and explain how powerful we believe that character is. Of course, very famous in the Old Republic era of Star Wars, one of the most famous Sith Lords in the expanded universe ever, and in my opinion, one of my favorite Sith Lords. He's really different than a more conventional Sith that we would see in modern Star Wars, and is one of those Sith Lords that introduced us to the idea that maybe they could be more entity than actual living being, which I think is a really interesting way to take the character. Anyway, today Anthony's going to share with you the origin of Darth Nihilus, and then we're going to talk about exactly how powerful we believe this character to be.
Yeah, so Darth Nihilus is a really fun character. He was a human Sith Lord, and during a battle on the planet Malachor 5, the Republic used this weapon called a mass shadow generator, and it was so powerful that it destroyed most of all life on the planet, and then even things that were close, like in surrounding orbit. And during that detonation of the mass shadow generator, it changed Darth Nihilus, and he became something a lot less than human. And during that change, after he's lost everything, after he's witnessed this terrible event, he encounters a survivor on that planet, and in that moment he feeds off the force of that survivor. And what happens to him is, in that moment, all that pain and sorrow that he had, that emptiness inside of him, kind of just went away. But as moments passed, it all came back, and then he grew this never-ending hunger to start draining the force from all these different people. And the more he did it, the quicker that feeling would go away, and the more he wanted to continue it, which ultimately gave him this incredibly unique agenda where he's not so much like all other Sith, where he's trying to either destroy the Republic or gain control of the galaxy for the Sith's rule, but he's really just hungry to eat all this force. Not literally eat, but he wants to drain everything of its force. And
right.
He's really interesting.
He's an interesting Dark Lord,
Yeah.
because he puts the agenda of consuming all the Force energy in the whole galaxy over the agenda of the actual Sith themselves.
Yeah.
Many people have even pointed out that he's barely a Sith Lord at all, because he doesn't push that agenda of even ruling the galaxy.
Yeah.
Darth Nihilus's purpose is to consume as much energy as possible, Force energy, and if that means that he has to take over the galaxy first, then so be it. But that's not his ultimate goal. His ultimate goal really in the end isn't even to gain as much power as possible, which is the ultimate goal of all Sith Lords. The ultimate goal of Nihilus is just to appease that hunger that's within him. Ironically, though, as you pointed out, the more he feeds, the more hungry he eventually becomes. And the reason that he developed that ability, real quick, is of course because of the super weapon, the mass shadow generator. But because of the mass shadow generator, all of the emotions that he was feeling at that time when he was brought to the brink of death by the super weapon were amplified. So the feeling of losing his entire family, of the fact that the Sith had now lost this war, it was all amplified in that moment.
Yeah.
And he discovers this new Force ability that he has, Force Drain, although he didn't even know it at that time. And like you said, when he came across the survivor, he sort of put it into use distinctively. As far as Darth Nihilus's powers and abilities are concerned, he learned a whole lot under his apprenticeship of Darth Traya. It's very much made clear in the game, though, that naturally Darth Nihilus is more powerful than Traya, simply that Traya is more learned than he is in the Force.
Yeah. Well, Nihilus is interesting, too, because it's he isn't even trying to drain people's force all the time. He has this thing where it's even just being present somewhere will just naturally kind of drain the force energy from all of his surroundings, which is really cool. He even has his own spaceship where he has these people that work on the ship underneath him that are kind of these lifeless zombie characters because whenever there's anything in his presence, like the force is just drained from them, so they can't be these like full like force energy lively people. And he's kind of unparalleled in that power too, as far as anybody's ability to drain the force from somebody. He even completely strips Darth Treya of all of her force abilities, and nobody else is really quite as good as at that as Darth Nihilus.
Yeah, with the help of her other apprentice, Darth Sion, the two of them are actually, like you said, able to completely sever Treya's connection to the force because she's the only real threat to them. Anyway, concerning Darth Nihilus, they said this about his power. The extent of his power cannot be put into words, and his perceptions have grown as well. To him, you are as dust motes in a storm, a grain upon the beach, and as insignificant as a body that orbits the graveyard of Malachor. Basically, what that's saying is Darth Nihilus is extremely powerful, and more than that, he does not care for you and your abilities either. He views you as just another person to siphon energy from.
Yeah.
As far as his other skills, which again, this is a series documenting how powerful a character is overall, Darth Nihilus was skilled with the lightsaber, not exceptionally so. All we know is that he fought with one hand and that he was pretty precise, but again, nothing extremely noteworthy. Nowhere on the level of a Darth Bane or a Darth Vader.
Yeah.
His abilities lied in the Force is where his true power lie, basically. But because he fought with a single hand, we can kind of deduce that he used Form 2 Makashi, the same lightsaber form used by Dooku, and that was also a popular form used at the time. Because, of course, the Jedi and the Sith were in constant conflict with one another, they would want to know how to duel most appropriately, so Darth Nihilus used Form 2, most likely. As far as other powerful Force abilities that he learned, he actually had several of them, and what I think is kind of cool about Nihilus is he was more talented in the more obscure abilities of the Force because he was so connected to it. He has abilities such as Dark Rage, Farsight, Force Lightning, Force Resistance, Force Scream, and Force Whirlwind. And we also know that he had the opposite ability of Force Healing, which was Dark Healing, where he could actually have one of his allies feel great power in the Force for a short amount of time. And then he also had some proficiency with Sith Alchemy. Most notably, because after he had fed for so many years, he began losing touch with the physical world. And because of that, he had to actually bind his spirit, his very Force energy that remained, to his mask and his robes. And in order to do that, he had to use Sith Alchemy.
Yeah. Isn't that even a thing with his character, too, where it's like, even very soon after the mass shadow generator had permanently changed who he was, like there was never really a person behind that mask. Like he was always just kind of like more of an entity at that point, but there wasn't really a human there anymore, right?
He still had a body at that point, but it was very much going away.
Yeah.
And the more he fed, the more his body dissipated. Until the point, again, where literally he had to bind his spirit to something physical because the body no longer remained.
With the hopes that one day maybe another person would don that mask and then some part of his like spirit would take over.
Right.
Like
if he were ever
host.
to be defeated, that would be the ultimate goal of him. But in life, he had a ton of really impressive Force feats. We've seen him actually grab a ship from like orbit and move it around, break it apart, tear it apart. He's drained entire planets of the Force before, which is hugely impressive. One of the most popular things that people attribute Darth Nihilus to is that he was able to destroy a planet, which of course he was able to destroy a planet, and that's no mere feat of any Force wielder at all. He was really talented with Force Lightning. In fact, he could use Red Force Lightning, which is a more rare and some people believe to be powerful variant of it. So that's really cool. Darth Nihilus is all around an extremely powerful and deadly Force wielder. As far as weaknesses are concerned, when he came up against an opponent that could withstand his Force drain abilities, he was kind of nullified because, again, he was never spectacular in any other facet of like the Force or lightsaber skill. So if an opponent could stave off his Force drain for a small amount of time or a foreseeable amount of time, they could actually defeat him relatively easily.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all I have to say about Darth Nihilus. Do you have any closing thoughts on the character?
Not particularly.
Yeah, I understand that. Another notable thing that I would have about Darth Nihilus, though, is he's one of the few Sith Lords that legitimately threatened all life in the Star Wars galaxy. That was his ultimate goal, and if he was not stopped and he was able to grow more powerful, we have every reason to believe that he could have grown to the point where he could have drained all life from the entire universe.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's really cool that as a Sith Lord, he really didn't have any sort of Sith agenda. He literally just wanted nothing more than to satisfy his hunger, and full well knowing that if that meant that he had to take all of the Force energy from the entire universe, that he was willing to do it, even if it meant the destruction of everything.
Right.
Which is pretty awesome.
And another one of his weaknesses, I may add, is he put his need to feed above everything else. And that could somewhat be manipulated, especially, say, if Darth Nihilus met another dark side wielder, they could very much manipulate the fact that he constantly needed to feed, and against being rational and against like actually thinking through a situation, he would put that need above that. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on the character of Darth Nihilus? Like we said, he's one of the most unique Sith Lords that have ever been created, even for Star Wars Legends. One of the Sith Lords that I fell in love with the most in the EU, and one of the first Sith Lords that I was ever introduced into the EU. A really interesting character, a really different Sith Lord.
Super cool design.
Absolutely. I love the design of Darth Nihilus. But that's just our breakdown. What are your thoughts on the character of Nihilus and his power? Where does he rank against other ancient Sith Lords? And is he one of your favorite characters as well? If you guys enjoyed this video, we always appreciate it if you could leave a like, as it really keeps us going and it helps promote it in the algorithm as well, which helps. Anyway, my friends, thank you so much for watching. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.